You know what kills more marriages than cheating? It's not money. It's not in-laws. It's this toxic belief you probably have right now, that your partner must love you the way you want. I spent 50 years watching couples destroy perfectly good relationships because they confused love with demands. Here's the brutal truth nobody tells you. The more you demand love, the faster it disappears. And I'm going to show you exactly why your brain is sabotaging your marriage and how to stop it before it's too late. Look, I get it. You want your partner to love you the way you love them. You want to feel valued, desired, prioritized. That's not just normal, it's beautiful. The problem isn't wanting love. The problem is demanding it. See, most marriage advice tells you to communicate your needs or set boundaries. Fine, but nobody tells you the truth. When you turn preferences into demands, you become an emotional tyrant. And tyrants don't get loved, they get tolerated, then resented, then left. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to teach you the difference between healthy desires and toxic demands. You'll learn why your brain creates these demands, how they destroy intimacy, and the specific psychological tools to transform demands into preferences. This isn't soft, fluffy relationship advice. This is cognitive restructuring, the same approach I've used with thousands of couples to save marriages everyone else had given up on. You won't just understand your relationship better. You'll think differently. And when you think differently, you love differently. Let me start with something fundamental. Humans naturally transform preferences into absolute demands. The word must, should, have to in your internal dialogue reveals irrational beliefs, causing emotional disturbance. In relationships, this becomes my partner must love me exactly as I want instead of I prefer my partner love me this way. And this tiny shift in thinking is the difference between a healthy marriage and a toxic one. There are three major musts that show up in marriages, and I guarantee you've got at least one of them running through your head right now. First, my partner must treat me well and love me the way I deserve. That's a demand about other people. Second, I must perform perfectly and win their approval. That's a demand about yourself. Third, life must be easy and give me what I want. That's a demand about conditions. Every time you use these words in your head, must, should, ought, have to, you're creating emotional disturbance. Notice I'm not saying you can't want things. Want all you like. But the second you tell yourself something must happen, you've set yourself up for rage, anxiety, or depression when it doesn't. This is basic psychology, but most people don't understand it. Here's why your brain does this. Our primitive brain evolved to see threats as absolute. I must find food or I'll die. I must find shelter or I'll freeze. This worked for survival. But now we apply this same absolute thinking to preferences. My wife must initiate sex more. My husband must prioritize me over work. These aren't survival needs, they're preferences. But your brain treats them like life or death situations. That's why you feel such intense emotion when your partner doesn't do what you want. Let me show you the emotional cascade that happens. You start with a demand. Your partner doesn't meet that demand. So you tell yourself this is awful. That's called awfulizing. Then you say, I can't stand this. That's low frustration tolerance. Then you decide they're a terrible person or you're worthless. That's global rating of yourself or others. And this cascade leads to rage, depression, or anxiety, which leads to relationship destruction. All because you turn a preference into a must. I had a client once, Janet. She told me, my husband must remember our anniversary. Sounds reasonable, right? But notice the must. When he forgot, she didn't feel disappointed. She felt betrayed, enraged, like her whole marriage was a lie. Why? Because she turned a preference into an absolute demand. The disappointment of a forgotten anniversary is normal and healthy. You'd prefer he remembered. But the rage comes from the irrational belief he must remember. And that rage destroyed their connection for weeks. Over what? A forgotten date. Not abuse. Not betrayal. A forgotten date that her must turned into a catastrophe. Now you might be thinking, but Ellis, I should be able to expect certain things from my partner. I'm not being unreasonable. And you're right. You're not unreasonable to want things. But let me show you why even reasonable expectations become unreasonable demands, and how this destroys the very intimacy you're trying to create. Think about it logically. If you demand your partner show affection, and they do it, how do you know it's real? Maybe they're just complying with your demand to avoid conflict. So you've got affection, but not genuine desire. Then you start monitoring. Are they doing this because they want to or because I demanded it? Now you need even more reassurance, so you demand more, which makes them pull back, which makes you demand more. See the trap? You've created a cycle where you can never trust that the love is real because you coerced it. Here's what happens next. When partners feel constantly monitored, judged against impossible standards, and guilt-tripped for not meeting demands, they build resentment. Resentment is the death of desire. Nobody wants to have sex with their prison warden. Nobody wants to be affectionate with their judge. Your demands literally train your partner to associate you with pressure, obligation, and guilt. 3 things that kill attraction faster than anything else. You become the person they have to manage rather than the person they want to be close to. And here's the thing about love. It only means something when it's freely given. When you coerce it through demands, even if you get compliance, you've destroyed the thing you wanted. It's like holding a bird too tightly. You wanted to keep it close, but all you did was crush it. Love requires freedom. Demands eliminate freedom. Therefore, demands eliminate love. The logic is airtight. I've seen this pattern thousands of times. A husband demands sex. His wife complies because she feels guilty or pressured, but there's no desire, no passion. He can tell. So now he feels more rejected than if she just said no. He got the physical act, but he knows it's not real, and that knowledge eats at him. Pretty soon, he's demanding even more enthusiastically that she want him, which is impossible. You can't demand desire. You can't force passion, and trying to do so guarantees you'll destroy it. Here's another thing. You actually have more influence when you stop demanding. When you say, I'd really love it if we had more date nights together, but I understand you're stressed with work, you've opened a conversation. When you say you never prioritize us anymore, you've started a war. The first one invites cooperation. The second one invites defense and counterattack. Your partner hears the first one and might think, they're right, I should make more effort. They hear the second one and think, here we go again, nothing I do is ever good enough. Demands replace influence with control attempts. And control attempts in adult relationships always fail. Always. Because adults resist being controlled. So you end up with less of what you want, not more. The irony is brutal. The more you demand love, the less you get it. The more you try to control your partner's feelings, the more they pull away. It's psychological law. Okay, so demands don't work. But you're probably wondering, what's the alternative? I just accept being ignored and unappreciated? Absolutely not. There's a massive difference between being a doormat and being non-demanding. Let me show you what healthy preferences look like instead of these toxic demands. The shift from must to prefer isn't just word games. It's a fundamental cognitive restructuring that changes your emotional experience and behavior. Preferences allow for disappointment without devastation, desire without desperation. Let me give you the formula. A demand sounds like this. You must show me more affection. A preference sounds like this. I'd really love more affection from you. I don't need it to survive, but I strongly want it. Notice the difference? The preference acknowledges your desire without making it a life or death requirement. This one shift changes everything. You can feel disappointed when you don't get it, but you won't feel enraged or depressed. Disappointment is uncomfortable. It sucks, but it doesn't destroy relationships or your mental health. Rage and depression do. There are actually 3 levels of preferences, and understanding this helps you see that not all preferences are weak. First, cool preferences. It would be nice if we watch my favorite show tonight. That's a minor want. Second, warm preferences. I'd really like us to spend more quality time together. That's an important want. Third, hot preferences. I deeply desire regular physical intimacy in our marriage. That's a very important want. All 3 are still preferences, not demands. Even hot preferences don't include must. You can deeply desire something and still survive without it. That's maturity. That's emotional health. And here's what people don't understand. A hot preference can be just as strong as a demand emotionally. The difference is what happens when you don't get it. Let me give you a test. Ask yourself this question about any want you have. If I don't get this, will I still be okay? Can I still be happy? Will I still have a good life? If the answer is yes, it's a preference. If your brain screams no, I'll be miserable forever, that's a demand, and that's irrational. Nobody ever died from lack of appreciation. Nobody ever died from their partner not initiating enough. You'll be uncomfortable, maybe very uncomfortable, but you'll survive and can still have happiness. When you really believe this, not just say it, but truly believe it, you've made the shift. And I'm not asking you to believe it on faith. I'm asking you to look at the evidence. Have you survived every time your partner disappointed you so far? Yes. Will you survive the next time? Yes. Then it's not a must. It's a preference. Here's what you gain by preferring instead of demanding. First, emotional stability. You feel disappointment instead of rage. You can have a conversation instead of a fight. Second, better communication. You make invitations instead of accusations. People respond much better to would you be willing instead of you never. Third, more influence. When people don't feel pressured, they're more open to your requests. Fourth, authentic connection. You create space for genuine response instead of forced compliance. Fifth, personal power. Your happiness isn't hostage to someone else's behavior. Let me use an analogy. You go to a restaurant and you prefer steak, but they're out of steak. You can enjoy chicken instead. You're disappointed you didn't get your first choice, but you're not enraged. You're not throwing a tantrum. You're not declaring the restaurant terrible or your night ruined. You've adjusted. You're fine. That's a preference. A demand would be refusing to eat anything else, screaming at the waiter, and ruining your evening over the lack of steak. See how crazy that sounds? But that's what you do in your marriage when you demand instead of prefer. I had a client who shifted from he must call me every day to I'd love daily calls, but can be fine without them. Guess what happened? He started calling more. Why? Because she removed the pressure. He was no longer calling to avoid her anger or guilt trips. He was calling because he wanted to, and she could feel the difference. The calls became pleasant instead of obligatory check marks. That's the paradox of non-demanding. You often get more of what you want when you stop demanding it. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like I'm lowering my standards, like I'm settling. And I've got to address this head on because it's the biggest misunderstanding about what I'm teaching. There's a huge difference between having standards and being demanding. You can have high standards, strong boundaries, and still not be demanding. Let me explain the difference between boundaries and demands. A boundary is about what you will do. A demand is about what they must do. A boundary sounds like this. I won't stay in a relationship where I'm being cheated on. That's about your behavior and choices. A demand sounds like this. You must never be attracted to anyone else. That's about controlling their thoughts and feelings. Boundaries are healthy and necessary. Demands are controlling and destructive. You can leave a relationship without demanding the other person change. Let's say your partner consistently dismisses your feelings, won't go to counseling, and shows no effort to improve things. You can have the preference. I strongly prefer a partner who respects my feelings. And you can have the boundary. I won't stay in a relationship that lacks basic respect. That's not a demand. That's a standard. The difference? You're not demanding they change to meet your needs. You're recognizing they are who they are and deciding if that works for you. That's mature. That's healthy. You're not saying you're wrong for being this way. You must change. You're saying this is who you are, and it's not compatible with what I want in a relationship, so I'm choosing to leave. Big difference. Let me give you another example. Unhealthy version. You must be more romantic or this relationship won't work. That's a threat-based demand. Healthy version. I want a relationship with regular romance and affection. If we can't create that together, we might not be compatible. The first one makes your partner responsible for your happiness and threatens them. The second one shares your needs and acknowledges potential incompatibility without making them wrong. Here's the mature approach to relationships. If you prefer certain things and aren't getting them, first communicate clearly without demands. Then evaluate. Is this person willing to work on things? Are we making progress? Are we fundamentally compatible? If yes, keep working. If no, and your hot preferences aren't being met, you might need to leave. But you leave because of incompatibility, not because they failed to meet your demands. They're not bad or wrong, just not right for you. That's emotionally mature thinking. I had a client once who demanded her husband stop watching porn. She made him must. He had to stop or she'd leave. He agreed, but kept doing it in secret. Now she's got lie on top of the porn use. But I had another client with a similar situation. She said, I prefer a porn-free relationship. If that's not possible for you, I understand, but I'll need to leave because we're incompatible on something important to me. Her husband thought about it and said, you know what? I'd rather give it up than lose you. No demands, no threats, just clarity about preferences and boundaries. And he actually followed through because it was his choice, not her control. See, when you demand, people either comply resentfully or rebel. When you state preferences and boundaries, people make real choices. And real choices lead to real change. Forced compliance leads to hidden resentment and eventual relationship death. All right, so you understand the theory. Preference is good, demand's bad. But how do you actually make this shift? Because I guarantee right now, your brain is full of these must statements, and you don't even notice them. Let me teach you the specific technique I've used with thousands of people to rewire these beliefs. It's called the dispute technique, and it's the core of rational emotive behavior therapy. You can't just tell yourself stop demanding things. Your brain doesn't work that way. You have to actively dispute your irrational beliefs using logic and evidence. Here's the model. We call it ABC-DEF. A is the activating event. Something happens. B is your belief or demand about that event. C is the emotional consequence. Then comes D, where you dispute the irrational belief. E is your new effective belief. And F is your new feelings. Let me walk you through an example. Activating event. Your partner forgets your birthday. Belief/demand. They must remember. This is awful. Consequence. You feel rage. You give them the silent treatment. You damage the relationship. Now comes the dispute. You ask yourself, where's the evidence they must remember? Where's the law of the universe that says this? There isn't one. Then the effective new belief. I strongly prefer they remember, but there's no reason they absolutely must. I'm disappointed, but it's not awful. Finally, new feelings. You feel disappointment, but not rage. Now you can communicate instead of attack. The dispute is everything. This is where the change happens. And there are 3 questions you use to dispute any demand. First question, where's the evidence this must be true? Show me the universal law that says your partner must show affection exactly as you want. You can't because it doesn't exist. Preferences exist. Wants exist. Must don't exist in relationships. There's no court that will convict your partner for not meeting your emotional needs exactly as you specify them. Second question, where's it written? If your partner must do something, where's this written? In what book? What law? What cosmic rule book? You made up this rule, and now your upset reality doesn't follow your made-up rule. That's crazy making. It's like demanding gravity stop working because you prefer to float. Reality doesn't care about your preferences. People are who they are. They do what they do. Your demands don't change that. Third question, does not getting what I want really make life awful and unbearable? Awful means nothing could be worse. Is your partner forgetting an anniversary really worse than cancer, war, starvation, losing a child? No, it's unfortunate. It's disappointing. You don't like it, but it's not awful. Stop awfulizing. Stop catastrophizing. It's bad, not awful. There's a huge difference. Here's your daily practice. Every day, catch yourself using must, should, have to, need to when you mean want to. Write it down. Then challenge it using those 3 questions. Do this for 30 days, and your brain will start automatically catching these beliefs before they create emotional disturbance. Let me give you a real example. You catch yourself thinking, my husband must help more with the kids. Now dispute it. Where's the evidence he must? You strongly prefer it. It would be better for you. It would be fairer. But must? No universal law says that. Where's it written? In your head. Nowhere else. Is it awful he doesn't help more? No. It's frustrating and disappointing. But you're handling it. You're surviving. So the reframe becomes, I prefer more help with the kids. I can ask clearly. If he won't, I'll deal with that disappointment and make decisions from there. That's rational. That's healthy. Why does this work? Your brain operates on neural pathways. The demand pathway is well-worn because you've thought this way for years, maybe decades. The preference pathway is new and weak. But every time you dispute a demand and practice a preference, you weaken the old pathway and strengthen the new one. After weeks of consistent practice, the preference thinking becomes automatic. That's not positive thinking bullshit. That's neuroscience. You're literally rewiring your brain. I've done this work myself. I've caught my own musts and disputed them thousands of times. And I still catch them occasionally because I'm human. But they're weaker now. They don't control me. When I notice a must creeping in, I can shut it down in seconds. That's the power of this practice. You become the master of your own thinking instead of a slave to irrational beliefs. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because once you stop demanding love from your partner, something almost magical happens. Not because of karma or the universe, because of psychology. Let me explain why non-demanding people actually get more of what they want in relationships. There's a principle in psychology called reactance. When people feel their freedom is threatened, they resist, even if they wanted to do the thing anyway. Let's say your partner felt like being affectionate, but then you demand affection. Suddenly, they don't want it anymore. Not because they're petty or mean, but because humans instinctively resist control. It's hardwired into us. When you stop demanding, you remove that resistance. Now they're free to want you. And freedom is attractive. Here's another thing. Nobody is attracted to desperation. When you're constantly demanding validation, affection, attention, you signal I need you to complete me. That's unattractive. It reeks of neediness. But when you shift to preferences, when you're genuinely okay, either way, you signal confidence and independence. That is attractive. And I'm not saying fake it till you make it. I'm saying actually develop this through the cognitive work I just taught you. When you truly believe I prefer this but don't need it, your whole energy changes. People can sense it. Here's what better communication looks like without demands. Instead of you never make time for us anymore. You clearly don't care about this relationship, which is a demand wrapped in an accusation. You say I've noticed we haven't had much couple time lately. I really miss that. Can we figure out a way to prioritize it? Which one is your partner more likely to respond positively to? The first one invites defense and counterattack. Your partner will list all the things they do, all their responsibilities, all your flaws. The second one invites problem solving. It's collaborative. It assumes good faith. You also create safety for vulnerability when you're non-demanding. When your partner knows you won't fall apart if they don't meet every need, they feel safer being honest. They can say, I'm exhausted tonight. Can we connect tomorrow? Without fearing your rage or guilt trip. That honesty strengthens relationships. Demand-based relationships require performance and dishonesty. Your partner has to pretend to feel things they don't feel, want things they don't want, just to keep the peace. That's not intimacy. That's theater. Let me tell you about a pattern I've seen in 50 years of seeing couples. The ones who stayed together long-term had one thing in common. Neither partner demanded the other be or do anything. They had preferences. They communicated. They had boundaries. They were willing to leave if fundamentally incompatible. But they didn't demand. And ironically, they reported higher satisfaction than the demanding couples who briefly got compliance through pressure. Because their love was real. It was freely given. It wasn't coerced. I had a client, Tom, who demanded sex. He'd initiate, she'd comply without enthusiasm, and he'd feel terrible afterward. More rejected than if she'd just said no. So I taught him a preference frame. He stopped demanding, stopped guilt-tripping, started saying, I'd love to connect physically tonight, but if you're not feeling it, that's okay. We could do something else. Guess what happened? Within 2 weeks, his wife started initiating. Not every day, not on his schedule, but genuinely, with real desire. Because the pressure was gone, the reactance was removed. She could want him again without feeling controlled. That's the paradox. Stop demanding and you often get more. But here's the thing. You can't do this as manipulation. You can't think I'll pretend and not demand, so I can trick them into giving me what I want. That's still a demand. You have to genuinely shift to I prefer this, but I'm okay if it doesn't happen. When you really mean it, when you've done the cognitive work to believe it, that's when things change. Look, we've covered a lot of ground here. Your brain is probably spinning with ideas, maybe some resistance, maybe some hope. So let me bring this all together and give you the exact steps to start transforming your relationship today. Here's what you learned. Your demands are killing your relationship. The word must in your head about your partner is creating emotional tyranny for both of you. You learned that demanding love guarantees you won't get authentic love. You learned the difference between preferences and demands, and how to use the dispute technique to challenge your irrational beliefs. Most importantly, you learned that preferences aren't weakness, they're maturity. You can have high standards, strong boundaries, and still not be demanding. You can deeply want something without needing it to survive. So here's your homework, and I'm serious about this. For the next 7 days, catch every must, should, and have to in your thinking about your partner. Write them down, then dispute them using those 3 questions. Where's the evidence? Where's it written? Is this really awful? Then reframe into a preference. Do this every single day, and watch what happens to your emotional state and your relationship. I guarantee you'll be shocked at how much better you feel when you stop demanding the universe conform to your wishes. You don't need your partner to change for you to be okay. You're okay right now. You're strong enough to handle disappointment. You're mature enough to have preferences without demands. And when you truly believe that, when you live that, you become the kind of person others want to be close to. Not because you're perfect, not because you have no needs, but because you're emotionally independent. And that's attractive. That's powerful. That's the foundation of real love. Now, if you found this valuable, here's what to watch next. Because there's another toxic belief that destroys relationships even faster than demanding love. It's the belief that your partner should make you happy. And if you've ever caught yourself thinking, if they just did X, then I'd be happy, you need to hear what I have to say about that. I break down why this happiness outsourcing is destroying your mental health and your relationships, and what to do instead. It's one of my most controversial teachings, but it's also the most life-changing. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Stop expecting your partner to make you happy, and let me show you why your happiness is your job, not theirs. Trust me, this one will change how you see every relationship in your life. Go watch it now.